Bienvenidos, Fright fans. Welcome to the horror show. I'm Jaime Fuego.
I'm Cecil Laird.
And we have a special presentation of possibly my favorite horror series ever, Phantasm. After waiting for the last few years, we finally got to check out Ravager today because it hit VOD. It's supposed to get a limited theatrical run at some point, but probably just your local art house studio. Nothing much beyond that. And we're going to give some thoughts about it. I must say, I was really seeing a different touch with a different director, David Hartman, who had worked on the previous Phantasm films with Coscarelli, but Coscarelli hands the reins off, man. Did you feel like it was a little bit of a different tone?
Here's the thing. Well, it was definitely a different tone, but
I felt like big time.
The biggest issue I had with the movie was the structure.
Yes.
The structure was exceedingly flawed, and it was almost like you could see like this bowl that was created from clay, but it was cracked all over the place, and the pieces weren't quite fitting together just right.
No.
And I don't know, frankly, if that could be blameable on the script or the actual execution of the script.
Well, Hartman did co-write the script with
well,
Coscarelli,
then,
so
there's
maybe
very little to hand off blame on here, because it just was nonsensical at times.
Agreed, yeah. The story, I think, was one of the weakest points in this because of the fact that they had previously hinted at, we knew the tall man was from another dimension, right? But aside from that, we didn't know that there was like various other overlapping dimensions. It's almost like the Stephen King, H.P. Lovecraft thing where, you know, there's all these overlapping, alternating dimensions, and they really explored that big time in this. And I felt like it just got convoluted and that it didn't even know what it was trying to say in the end, which is big time disappointment because I felt like all of the previous four films, they all had the same tone and the same eeriness and weirdness, but despite their flaws, they knew what they were trying to say. This one, I felt like just couldn't figure it out, man.
No, and I challenge you, I'm actually challenging you right now to somehow give an overview of the plot of this movie for people so they know what it's about.
Well, after the fourth one, we know that Mike was getting that gold ball like taken out of his head, and you got the vibe that the tall man had been working on him for a very long time. And Reggie, you know, he was out there in the desert, and it kind of felt like Oblivion gave a proper ending to the series, I thought, and this felt very much like it was just trying to tack on some additional stuff. Reggie is in Death Valley, he's on foot, his car's been stolen, and he ends up getting it back in kind of a funny turn of events, one of the only amusing bits in the entire movie. But yeah, so he gets the Cuda back, and of course he finds a babe, because Reggie always finds a babe in 2 through 4, all of those previous ones, and so just heads back to her house, and of course, you know, there's orbs after him, and the tall man is still at play, and after that, it really turns into just almost trying to figure out which overlapping dimension Reggie's even in, and that's where things get just a little bit borderline silly for me.
Yeah, they go back and forth so many times, and without any real impetus for them jumping back and forth a lot of the time. Sometimes there is, but for the most part there isn't, at least that I can recall, and it just felt like such a mess. Now, before we get into the actual effects and stuff like that, because I think that's definitely a section we need to talk about here in this newest version, I want to hit on the acting, because surprisingly enough for me, the past movies, like, the acting has always been just kind of okay, but I've always loved Reggie and the key players
Reggie.
and everything like that.
Mr. Bannister.
But when they came back in this one, specifically Reggie and Michael and the late great Mr. Angus Scrimm as the tall man, they were great. I thought the acting was excellent. I even thought the return of Kat from the first film. I thought she was actually, she was brief, but one of my favorite bits in the whole movie, to be quite honest. But the acting was solid. Reggie knocking it out, and I thought Mike had a lot more to chew on this time than he had in the past. As a matter of fact, I can't say that he would have had an opportunity to have that much to chew on without that dimension hopping structure. So I suppose you have to kind of give it credit there, because it gave the actors a lot to chew on. But
it gave him a chance to shine, because there is in the story wise all these different realities that Reggie finds himself in, and he's not sure which one is real or if he's just like being torn between all of them. But one is where he's in a home for almost like a hospice of sorts, and you can tell his health is, fleeting, and he's doing bad, and Mike is coming to visit him, and he's like, there's those dreams that you've told me about. And I thought that when there was just 2 of them, that was intriguing, but then when you start finding more and more dimensions and stuff, which I guess it's a minor spoiler. We're not going to delve into too much
marzipan. Too much marzipan. It got way over the top with itself, right? Where they're trying to guide themselves a path, but they end up like tying themselves in a knot almost while they're trying to do all these weird loops and different dimensions and things. It just gets so messy, the movie, that it just gets knotted up, and you get pulled right out of it because you're like, oh, we're jumping again? Jesus, come on,
But at least all that jumping back to the acting gave them the chance to, and it just tackled different facets of what their character could be doing, because there's the post-apocalyptic one, which is the last bit of story to touch upon the other reality that they find themselves in. It's like, imagine if the entire Earth got taken over by the weird red dimension that the Tall Man was from, and so that's another potential reality. And so got these three warring, spots for your attention, and acting, it was good. Story-wise, all over the place.
All right, I also wanted to touch on the music real quick.
My favorite score ever, possibly.
It actually was interesting. It was a lot of reprising of the main theme.
Yeah, but updating it.
Yeah, but updating it. And until the music in the very last part during the credits.
Oh, there's a rap, and it was so funny, man. I got to tell you, what horror series is not complete without its own, hip-hop bit over the main score? And we finally got that in the 5th and final Ravager installment, for better or for worse.
Yeah, but the actual music, the underlying tones of the film that weren't just the theme reprised, I thought they were effective and good and everything, so I wanted to at least give a bit of a shout out to that before we got into possibly the meat of the discussion here.
Yeah, and the meat of the discussion probably being the effects, and once again, we have some practical, we have some, honestly, a decent amount of CGI.
A lot of CGI when you get into the second part of the movie.
Yeah, it's true.
The first part it did feel like the old movies. Like the first half felt more like the first couple, where it's just a few flying spheres and everything else.
And actually chopping up people's heads and blood flow and everything.
The
standard tropes.
It gets into a problem for me because I think they learned in the earlier movies where they only ended up doing that like once each movie.
Yeah.
Like they had to squeeze it in because that's the thing. That's what Phantasm is known for.
It's a money shot.
But in this one, they do that too many times. It's the same thing. Like people only die in essentially two ways. It's that and something else, which happens to numerous people, which I'm not going to say because we don't want to spoil everything. You guys know that other death is going to happen. I'm just saying it happens more than you expect. And then there's not much other than that, unfortunately.
No, the kills were kind of unimaginative, and I've seen them do some crazy things with orbs. Turn like boobies into orbs and all kinds of crazy stuff, man. But this one, once again, I felt like it was so all over the place that it couldn't figure itself out, and so it just went for the standard. It was almost like, sadly not to go back to the director, but it felt to me like somebody trying to make a Phantasm movie instead of really being a Phantasm movie.
Without as much budget. I don't know. I can't tell if this was a higher budget or a lower budget than the most recent one, because they did some really awesome practical gore effects in those earlier movies, and it was crazy seeing like a ball like squeezing its way out of a guy's head and stuff like that. Like there was some really awesome stuff, and anything that involved something like that immediately went to computer generated stuff. So I don't know if they just estimated that the CGI graphics are just cheaper than the really cool gore effects. And that may well be, but if it's not going to look
cool, I thought at least.
The big orbs looked cool, but they didn't interact with anything except for twice. And they showed both times in the trailer. So it's like there really wasn't that much more to them except that they were in the background a lot of time, some of the time.
Yeah, well, maybe that's back to the budget, man. Maybe, film has come a long way in the digital era and stuff. Since the last Phantasm, Oblivion was in the late 90s, I think, like 99?
I think it might have been 98,
Yeah, something like that. So it's been a long time. But yeah, I almost feel like the film looking that good made the CGI stand out more as being fake.
I think it might be the case, yeah.
That's at least the way I felt.
It did look good cinematography-wise. Like, I thought they chose good shots, and it was interesting to watch that way. Like, you could tell from the very first shot, it was like, oh, this movie looks really good. You can tell right off the bat.
Said, right when it started.
I was like, oh, it already looks better than all the originals. It just didn't mesh well with the actual CG stuff. and they relied on it too much, and I just wish they would have spent the money on whatever practical effects they could have gotten away with.
Not to drive home my point even more so, but once again, all over the place. Can't figure itself out. A lot of interesting ideas that just didn't mesh properly, whether it was on the story end or the effects end, I thought.
Yeah, I agree. And, you know, I don't know. Outside of that, what else is there to say about Phantasm Ravager?
That I love this series, and it's my least favorite.
Really?
Yeah.
Your least favorite of them all? Wow.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah,
Well, you know
despite
what?
some really good emotional moments in some of those, you know, different timelines and stuff like that, aside from that, it felt very uninspired to me. And being a send-off, that's what really just breaks my heart, because Angus Scrimm has passed on, you know, and all that. His memory will live on. But nonetheless, we're not going to get any more Phantasm movies at this point, and I feel like Oblivion closed the doorway just so much better, you know, than this one did. You know, all of the others were open-ended, and this one was open-ended, but not in that good way, like 1 through 3, where the tall man would pop back up. And I have to give a shout out to seeing Rocky. I guess that's a little bit of a spoiler, but the babe from the third Phantasm, Lord of the Dead, she pops back up, and I guess kind of an after credits. And yes, we're saying that at the end, so it's kind of a spoiler maybe. Yeah, sorry about that, guys.
That's okay.
But it was something I wanted to mention.
If you like the actress from the third, then hang in there till after the credits.
She has better hair
get
now.
It paid off. She looked good, actually. She looked real good. But again, her banter was rough. I mean, the dialogue in this, the script was just kind of brutal at times, man. Just brutal.
Back to it, my least favorite of the series, and I'm really sad to say that. But hey, I stand by it. I still had fun with the movie at times, but yeah, in the end, it just feels kind of out of place in the series to me.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah, I can totally understand that. And this is actually a good instance of when people might say, you know, they should do original things. They shouldn't go back to the well and do sequels or reboots and remakes because it just doesn't go well. And my argument is always, I'd like a chance at having another good version of the film than just immediately poo-pooing it. And unfortunately, this is one of those instances where I will just ignore this movie if I do go back to revisit the series.
Yeah, it almost feels to me like that fourth Indiana Jones movie.
Which one?
A little bit. The fourth Indiana Jones movie.
There wasn't a fourth Indiana Jones movie.
Exactly right.
Yeah. So anyway, I think that's going to do it for this review of Phantasm 5 Ravager, or just Phantasm Ravager, as the marketing would have you believe.
Yeah.
But thanks for watching. I'm Cecil Laird.
Gracias, I've been Jaime and Fuego.
And until next time, remember, stay scared.